This Parsha Podcast is dedicated in loving memory and leilui nishmas Henoch Dov ben Tzvi Hirsch, Rabbi Henoch Dov Hoffman of blessed memory, who passed away a few weeks ago. May his soul be elevated in heaven. We have a brand new book. We are saying goodbye to the book of Genesis, and we're opening up the book of Shemos, the book of Exodus. And the name of the Parsha is Shemos, and the name of the book is Shemos, and the word Shemos means names. So we have a book titled Names, a Parsha titled Names. And if you look at the Parsha, and you just read through the story, you see names are featured all over the Parsha. The Parsha begins with the enumeration of the names of the sons of Jacob. They were brought down to Egypt. Of course, Joseph preceded them. The famine brought them all down, but now the people are firmly embedded in Egypt. And we're going to tell the story of this nation now. And the book begins by going back to the 12 sons of Jacob, who originally came down to Egypt. And chapter 1 details the enslavement and the torment and the oppression of the Israelites. And it has a staggered progression. Pharaoh and his henchmen, they plot and they scheme and they connive, and they appoint taskmasters over them, and they force them to build the cities of Pithom and Ramses, and the nation proliferates nonetheless. To the degree of oppression was the degree of proliferation. And Pharaoh imposes back-breaking labor, and he makes their lives bitter with labor. And then he asks the Jewish midwives, Shifra and Puah, to kill all the Jewish baby boys. And of course, these women, they feared God, and they refuse, and they did not heed Pharaoh's decrees. And quite the contrary, they actually provided life for the babies. Now, who were these women, these righteous women? Shifra and Puah, Rashi tells us that these are nicknames for Yocheved, Moshe's mother, and Miriam, Moshe's sister. So this is another names sidebar. The Parsha begins with names, and we have Yocheved and Miriam. Their names are altered. Their identity is obscured. They're given names to disguise their true identity. Now, chapter 2 tells the story of the birth and the adoption and the coming of age and the banishment and the marriage of Moshe. But it starts off with two anonymous people. A man from the house of Levi, a Levite, marries a Bas Levi, a daughter of Levi, a Levite woman. And of course, these are Moshe's parents, but they're unnamed. The verse actually goes out of its way. It pointedly avoids identifying them. It's just two anonymous Levites and their unnamed son. They have a baby, but Pharaoh had decreed that all babies, even Egyptian babies, are thrown into the water. He was really paranoid of someone being born who would save the nation, who would be a savior. Moshe is hidden for 3 months, and then when his mother can no longer hide him, she places him in a wicker basket, puts the basket in the water, and with Miriam watching, what do you know, the princess of Egypt, Pharaoh's own daughter. She's coming to take a little bath, and she spots the box, and she sees Moshe, and she adopts him, and she cannot find a wet nurse to nurse the baby. And Miriam helpfully suggests, well, I know of a woman who could maybe serve as a wet nurse. And she suggests the actual mother of the baby, Yocheved. And Moshe is named, and who is he named by? He's named by his adoptive Egyptian mother. And he grows up as a prince in Pharaoh's home. But then Moshe matures, and he goes out, and he witnesses the suffering of his brethren, and he sees their plight, and he empathizes with them. And then he sees an Egyptian man who's striking a Hebrew man, and he turns to and fro, and he sees no man, and he kills him, and he buries him in the sand. The first day that Moshe goes out, he's already taking aggressive action to defend his brethren against their oppressors. Now, how did Moshe kill this Egyptian man? With what tool? So the verse doesn't tell us. But the next day, Moshe goes out again, and this time he sees two quarreling Jews. And he tells one of them, "Wicked one, why do you strike your fellow?" And the man responds sardonically, "Are you intending to kill me with words like you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" So Rashi comments that this reveals that Moshe killed the Egyptian with words, meaning he uttered the ineffable name of God. He employed the name of God to strike and kill the Egyptian. Now, of course, another name subplot of the Parsha, and it raises some interesting questions. How exactly does execution via using the name of God work? Question 1. Question 2, how did Moshe know this? He was a prince in Egypt. He had some passing experience with his people when his mother was nursing him. She was ostensibly a hired wet nurse to nurse the adopted son of the Egyptian princess. But where did he pick up this specialized knowledge? That's a mystery. But regardless, Moshe is arrested and he is forced to flee. And he goes to Midian and he goes to the well. And there are 7 girls there, sisters, and they're being attacked by these brutes, and Moshe rescues them. Now, who are these 7 sisters? They're daughters of the priest of Midian. Well, what's his name? In chapter 2, verse 16, he's only identified as the Kohen Midian, the priest of Midian, but his name is revealed to us 2 verses later. Chapter 2, verse 18. His name was Reuel. And Moshe ends up marrying Tzipporah, daughter of Reuel, priest of Midian. So let's get this clear. Who is Moshe's father-in-law? A guy named Reuel. Now, 8 verses later, we read about Moshe as a shepherd for his father-in-law, and suddenly his father-in-law has a different name. He was called Reuel in 2:18. In chapter 3, verse 1, Moshe is a shepherd for the flock of Yisro, of Jethro, his father-in-law, the king, the Kohen, the priest of Midian. We see a shift in the name of Jethro, from Reuel to Yisro, to Jethro. And Moshe brings the flock to the burning bush, and this is Moshe's first documented prophecy. And God, in the burning bush, whatever that means, we'll see a little bit later on, that's a sign of empathy. It's a small, pathetic, thorny bush. The nation is suffering. God is suffering alongside them. God tells Moshe, go back to Egypt. Demand from Pharaoh that he release the Israelites. And Moshe launches a salvo of objections. Me? Go talk to kings? I'm not worthy. The people, to save them with miracles, they're not worthy. And then the next objection, Moshe says, what name shall I tell them sent me? There are many different names of God in the Torah. And each name connotes a different form of relationship. So Moshe wanted to know with which relationship, with which mode of divine treatment is this message of salvation, of redemption, of Exodus, which name is it being sent with? And God responds with the name Eke, Asher Eke, I will be as I will be. And then the verse ends, God says to Moshe, go tell the Israelites, Eke, I will be, that's the name of God, Shlachani Alechem, sent me to you. And Rashi actually notes that these are 2 different names. The word Eke, Asher Eke, I'm not pronouncing it, by the way it's pronounced, because the name of God, we don't say it, unless it's appropriate. The first name was, I will be with them now in their suffering as I will be with them in all future tribulations, challenges, exiles, torments. That's what God initially told Moshe to tell the nation was the name of God that was sending this message. And Moshe says to God, they're suffering now. You're bringing up more challenges and future distant tribulations. It's enough. They're suffering enough with what's on their plate currently. And God says, you're right. Don't say Eke Asher Eke. Just say Eke, I will be with them. I am with the people. So the idea of a name of God, it appears again in our Parsha. Moshe inquired which name of God, which method of relationship is being expressed in the Exodus, or at least in this initial stage of the Exodus. Now, several objections later, they won't believe me, Moshe said. I'm not a man of words. I have a heavy tongue and a heavy mouth. Send Aaron instead. After all of these objections, Moshe finally agrees to go. And he goes back to ask permission from his father-in-law. They had had a previous agreement. Moshe would not leave without prior approval, and his father-in-law agrees. He was magnanimous. Go save your brethren from Egypt. And now, what was the name of his father-in-law again? In 2:18, it's Reuel. In 3:1, it's Yisro, Jethro. Here in 4:18, we have a third name. He's now called Yeser or Jether. Now, to help clear the confusion about the name and the names of Moshe's father-in-law, I don't know if this clears the confusion or maybe exacerbates it. Rashi tells us that Jethro actually had 7 names. Reuel, Yeser, Yisro, Kani, Chovav, Chever, and Putiel. Now what that means? Another name-related sidebar in our Parsha. Now the Parsha ends with Moshe's initial unsuccessful attempt to persuade Pharaoh to release the Jews, and God promises Pharaoh will capitulate all right, but not quite yet. The Parsha is named names. The book is named names. And there are all sorts of interesting subplots about names in our Parsha. So let's dig in. Let's see what we can learn about names. So I want to begin by first establishing a well-developed principle. In the Torah, a name of a person or a thing is not just something that we can all agree upon, some sort of identifier for a thing or a person. A name in the Torah connotes the thing or the person's essence. Why was this person created? What's their mission? What role do they play in the Almighty's creation? So, for example, in Genesis chapter 2, God brings all the animals in front of Adam, and Adam named all the animals. And the verse says, the name that Adam assigned to each of the animals was indeed its name. And the commentaries all explain that Adam had such tremendous wisdom that he understood the essence of all the animals. What role were they created to play? And he was able to assign a fitting name that reflects the essence of each one of these animals. He wasn't just like spitballing. What's this one? It's an albatross. Let's call this one a flamingo. Porcupine. That's not what Moshe was doing. He understood the nature and the function of each one of these animals and why the Almighty created it and what role it has to play in creation, and he gave it the exact fitting name that was appropriate. And there's a remarkable midrash on this naming of animals done by Adam. This was a showdown of man versus angel. Before man was created, angels were already extant. And God consulted the angels. Shall we create man? And the angels said, well, tell us more. What's man all about? And God says to the angels, well, the wisdom that man has exceeds your wisdom. And I'll prove it to you. God takes animals, wild animals, domesticated animals, birds, and brings it to the angel. What name is fitting for this? What name is fitting for that? And the angels, well, they have no idea. And God takes the same animals and gives it to Adam. Tell us, what's this name? This is a shar, an ox. This is a chamar, a donkey. This is a sus, a horse. This is a gamal. This is a camel. And God says to Adam, okay, well, what's your name? Me? I'm Adam. Adam from Adamah. Man from dust. And God says to Adam, what's my name? You're Adonai. You are Adon. You are a master to all your creations. I imagine the angels could have just concocted a name for the animals, but wisdom is not just to make up something, it's to peer into the essence of a thing, to understand it, understand what role it plays, and to assign it a fitting name. That's what names mean in the Torah. A second example, Jacob. In the book of Genesis, he's about to meet his brother, but first he has a nocturnal struggle with an angel. Chapter 32 of Genesis. And after a night of scuffling and struggling, Jacob asks the angel, tell me, what is your name? And the angel responds, Vayomer, and the angel said, Lama zeh tishal shmi, why are you asking my name? And Rashi explains, we don't have a fixed name. Our names change. Everything is per the command, the instruction that we are sent upon. A name describes the essence, describes the mission of a certain thing. Well, angels, their missions are always changing, and thus their names are always changing. To ask an angel, what's your name? It's another way of saying, well, what's your mission? Well, the mission always changes, and therefore there is no fixed name. Now, we do have names. The names of humans are fixed because apparently our mission is more permanent. Whereas the angels' names change all the time. They don't have a fixed mission. We apparently do. So that's the idea of names in general. Now, that changes the whole experience of trying to name a child, for example. How do you choose a name for your child? Choosing a name is applying you're like Adam in that story. You're saying, well, this is a sus, and this is a chamor, and this is a shor. This baby, what is this baby? What's this baby's mission and essence? That's what you're tasked with doing. How do you know? You're ignorant. No, you're not ignorant. I'm ignorant. We're all ignorant. So the Kabbalists tell us that to name a child, every parent receives a drop of prophecy. You don't even know what you're prophesying, but if you're giving a name to a child, that name will on some level be reflective of that child's essence, their soul, their mission, their essence, and what they're placed here to do. I always tell the story that my son, Yitzi is a nickname. His name is Yitzchak. Well, it's not just Yitzchak, it's Yitzchak and Aaron. Isaac, Aaron. And we had two very special grandfathers. My maternal grandfather and my wife's paternal grandfather that both passed very soon before the birth of my son. Now, we knew we were having a boy, so we discussed the names maybe. And the one thing we agreed upon, it's either going to be Yitzchak or Aaron. It's not going to be both. We agreed that was for sure. Which one it was going to be. Baby's born, and we said, well, why not both? And it was funny because I participated in both those conversations, and it was really strange to me that I knew for sure it's going to be one or the other. And then when the baby's born, I just, no, it's going to be both. So maybe that was prophetic. There was a sage, one of the sage's students had a baby. Well, help me name the baby. The sage refused. How can I deny your opportunity to have a bit of prophecy? So whenever we're talking about names in the Torah, names are not simply an agreed upon term for identifying a given thing. It's the essence of that thing. And even if we, fallible humans, are making a designation, there's a little drop of prophecy to pinpoint the essence of the person, the child that we're naming. So if you meet someone, theoretically, if you understand the essence of a name, you can reverse engineer their their character, right? Because the name is reflective of a person's essence. So the Talmud tells a great story. There were sages who would make character assessments based upon the name of the person that they meet. This is the book of Yoma, page 83b. It tells the story of three great sages, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi, and they were traveling. And it was almost Shabbos, and they needed to find an inn to stay for Shabbos. So they found an inn, and they meet the innkeeper. What's your name? Kedar. So one of the sages, his practice was always say, well, the name will tell me the essence. And the other two sages didn't really do this. Now the word Kedar is not really a word, but if you split out the word T and Dar, which means for a generation, that's a verse in scripture, Kedar tahapuchos hema. It's a very sinful generation. So the Rabbi Meir says this guy's name is Kedar, and the word Kedar in the Torah means it's a sinful generation. This guy is dangerous. I'm not going to give him my wallet to watch. It was before Shabbos. They need to put their purses in a safe place. So of course, you go to the hotel and they have like a safe. Leave it by the front desk. It's safe there, right? Leave it by the front desk. Rabbi Meir says, this guy's name is Kedar. I'm not trusting him. The other two, they didn't pick up on this, or that wasn't their practice to judge people by their names. So they just gave him the purses. And Rabbi Meir says, I'm going to hide it. And he went outside and he found on the premises of the hotel, there was a family burial plot. So he dug a little hole next to one of the graves, the grave of the father of the hotelier, of the innkeeper. And he placed his valuables there. And we'll just keep it there till after Shabbos. I don't trust this guy. That night, the innkeeper has a dream. And his father appears to him in the dream. And he tells him, you should know, one of these people, they hid money in a purse in this place right next to my gravesite. Now that's a very strange dream. So the next morning he tells the rabbis, I had this dream that my father, who's buried outside, he told me that there's money, that one of you put your purses there. They realized they have a problem because this guy is now he's dangerous. So they said, no, whenever you dream Friday night, those dreams are never prophetic. They're trying to make him not dig it all up. Even though they told him that, Rabbi Meir, the whole day, the whole Shabbos, he's spending it outside. He's milling about near. He doesn't want the guy to come steal his stuff. It's time to check out Sunday morning. This is all a story in the Talmud. It's time to check out Sunday morning, and the two other sages who didn't make a character assessment based upon the person's name, and they gave him their wallets to watch. They say, can we have our, what wallets? Wallets? I don't know what you're talking about. What wallets? So we have a problem. The guy's denying that he took their wallets. And Ramirez says, listen, that's why I didn't trust him. His name is Kedar. This guy's problematic. So they say, well, why didn't you tell us? Well, I'm not going to say. I just thought maybe he was problematic. I didn't know for sure. So they're trying to get back their stuff. So they take him to a bar. They say, well, we'll get him drunk. Maybe he'll divulge where he hid our stuff. And he was drinking, and then his face got all flushed, and he got like a little bit of wine on his mustache. So he took a little napkin and cleaned his mustache, and they noticed in his mustache that he had some leftover lunch. There's some leftover from his breakfast, early breakfast. He had some lentils. So they said, aha, he ate lentils early this morning. So they went back to the hotel and spoke to his wife. Said, listen, your husband asked us to come and you should tell us where he hid the stuff. And he said, you're probably not going to believe us. So he sent with us the message just to prove that we're telling you the truth. He said, the proof is that I ate lentils this morning early for breakfast. Say, obviously he must have told you, he must have confided that in you because no one knows, just me and him eating the lentils together. So she gave them the wallets. They left, and the Talmud ends that this guy got home and he found out what happened and he murdered his wife. This guy's trouble. But anyhow, it's a very interesting story, and it gets back to this central idea. Names are not just random titles. Everyone has to have some title, or else how do you identify them? We're not going to wear numbers, right? The name will reveal the essence of a person, of a thing. Now, even the names of God, Moshe asked the question, which name of God is sending this message? Of course, God's essence is beyond us. It's not something we can even fathom, but the names connote a different relationship. So Moshe was asking, which mode of relationship would God be manifesting in the Exodus? Now, you may notice that there's many different names for God in the Torah. There are, in fact, 10 different names for God in the Torah, and 9 of those 10 names can be applied and are applied on other things. For example, one of the most common names for God in the Torah is Elohim. We don't say Elo. We don't say it with the H because that may be the name of God. However, the verse says that a human cord is also called Elohim. And in that context, it's not holy, so we could say it the way it's spelled out properly. Only one name of God, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, only that name is more associated with his essence. And that's why we're not even allowed to utter the name, because that would be us claiming that we have some sort of connection and understanding of God's essence, and therefore the tetragrammaton, the 4-letter ineffable name of God, we don't say it. And someone who enunciates it because they're claiming that they understand the essence of God, they lose their portion of what to come. So this is the general idea that I want to establish before we go to some very interesting places in our studies. Our name is our essence. Our name connotes our mission. Our name is effectively an identifier of our soul. And every soul is unique. And there's an ancient tradition. In the end of the Amidah prayer, to recite a verse from Scripture that begins with the same letter that our name begins with, and ends with the same letter that our name ends with. So, for example, the name Yaakov, just to take a random name, right? Yaakov. How do you spell it? A Yud, Ayin, Kuf, Vez. So you need to find a verse that starts with the letter Yud and ends with the letter Vez. So in the back of many Sidurim, prayer books, you'll find a list of all the different names and all the different corresponding verses. So the verse that I say, it's a verse from Psalms, Yancha, starts with the Yud. Yancha, which means that God will answer you. Yancha Hashem biyom tzar, a day of suffering. He'll protect you. The God of Jacob will protect you. Why is this important? Why is there this custom to recite this verse that corresponds to your name? Because after someone dies, they will meet angels, and a very intimidating angel, whose name is Duma. He's an unpleasant guy, and he is just all eyeballs. And the angel will demand to know what is your name. And if the person does not know their name, they're in big, big trouble. If they do know their name, then they are ushered into paradise. But if they don't know their name, then this very unpleasant angel takes, I don't even want to describe what he does very unpleasant things to this person, try to rejigger their memory to remind them of their name. And we have this prayer to ensure that we never forget our name, meaning our essence, our mission. And so when we're standing before the king in prayer, we invoke our name to try to remember and to reinforce the imperative of remembering our mission and what we need to do, and urge ourselves and coax ourselves to fulfill it while we still can. So names are very important. and carry very, very important significance in the Torah. And our Parsha is called Names. And our book is called Names. And it begins with the names of the sons of Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, and it lists them. Now, this is information that we know very well already. The Torah tells us the names of the sons as they're born. Just 2 parshios ago, Parshas Vayigash, when the sons of Jacob descended to Egypt, the Torah enumerates the 12 sons of Jacob and all their descendants, 70 souls that went down to Egypt. And the names haven't changed. So why are they repeated in the beginning of our book? It's a good question. And it's such a good question that all the commentators talk about it. The very first Rashi to our book asks this question, and he gives one answer, and the Ramban gives a second answer, and the Sephar gives a third answer, and the Baal Tum gives a fourth answer, and Dasakim, and the Chastuni, and many, many, many others. I imagine that if we want to put together 70 facets of this question, it will be easy, because it's such an obvious and glaring question. These names, we know them very well. I can ask young children, what are the names of the 12 sons of Jacob? They'll spit it out. They know it. Why does it begin our book? Why does it begin our Parsha? I saw a remarkable midrash. This midrash is a game changer, and then we're going to have a game changer on top of the game changer. I'm like envious of you. You're about to hear something so cool. Maybe I shouldn't oversell it. The midrash says these names are fittingly placed over here at the beginning of the book of redemption. This story, this book is about the nation leaving Egypt. They went into Egypt at the end of Genesis, and now they're about to leave. And even though it starts, it kind of dips. It's darkest before dawn, but this is the story of redemption. This is the book of the Exodus. And these names, these 12 names, are names of redemption. And then it goes through one by one. Reuven. The word Re'u means to see. God saw their suffering. Shimon, the word Shomea, Shema, means to hear. God heard their distress. Levi means to accompany. God, as we mentioned earlier, he was in the sneh, in the burning bush. He was with them in their suffering. He empathized with them. Yehuda means to thank, to appreciate. The nation, at the Song of the Sea, they thanked and appreciated God. Yisachar can be spelled out as yesh sachar. There is reward. The nation will be handsomely rewarded with all the plunder of Egypt. And that will be a fulfillment of the promise to Abraham that they will leave with great wealth. Zevulun, the word Zevul, means an exalted house. And that's a reference to the tabernacle. Benjamin, the word Benjamin is Yamin, right. And that's a reference to the verse in the Song at the Sea, that God is glorious in power. The right hand of God is glorious in power. And the word Dan means to judge. God judged the Egyptian. The word Naphtali, it's a reference to a verse that Torah is as sweet as honey, and dripping combs of honey, Nofes, is Naphtali, the sweetness of Torah that the nation will receive. That is hinted to in the name Naphtali. When the Torah describes the manna, Vehaman kizera Gad, it's like Gad, a coriander seed. That's a reference to the manna. Asher means to praise. The whole world, when they heard about the Exodus, they praised. They praised the people. They praised the story. And the word Yosef means to add an additional redemption. That's a reference to future redemptions, which will be based upon and modeled after the Exodus. That's what the Midrash says. These names tell the whole story of the Exodus. If I wanted to tell the whole story of the Exodus, all I could do is say 12 names. You could tell the whole story from beginning to end, from God seeing and hearing and empathizing all the way to getting the Torah, the sweet Torah, and the plunder, and the Song of the Sea, and the tabernacle. Could all be told just with 12 names. There were elements of redemption baked into the names, into the essence of these 12 men. God saw them, Reuven, heard their suffering, empathized with them, judged the Egyptians, gave the people their reward, revealed glorious splendor. The nation sang and praised, ate manna, got the sweet Torah, built the tabernacle, and we'll have another redemption. That's why it tells us, says the Midrash, the names of these 12 to begin the book. That's the reason why this is repeated over here. This is the book of redemption, and these 12 influences, each one of them, part of their name, part of their essence, contributes to the redemption. Now, this is a fascinating idea, but it's going to go a little further. I saw an amazing piece from Rabbi Wolfson. So we understand the name, it connotes the essence and the mission and the soul. But there's a lot of Yaakovs, okay? And they're not all the same. Lots of people have the same exact name, and they're totally different. Different characteristics, different skills, different attributes, different personalities, different ways of behaving. Even if they're both righteous, some of them exemplify themselves or exemplars in one area, and others, they seem to flourish in other areas, different ways of serving the Lord. So how can it be if the name is the essence and a parent has to have a little flicker, a little drop of prophecy before you name a child? Because you're going to reveal the essence. A lot of people have the same name and seem to have very different essences and missions. So he says that a name is not only a single thing. Just as an example, the Kabbalists reveal that each month of the 12 months is associated with a different orientation of the tetragrammaton, the four-letter ineffable name of God. So how do you spell the four-letter ineffable name of God? A yud, and then a hey, and then a vav, and then a hey. So it seems like it's spelled only one way, but no. There are 12 different ways to spell it. Because you can organize those four letters in 12 different permutations. Even though 4 factorial is 24. So you may think it's 4 letters, 4 factorial 24. Actually, no, because 2 of the letters are hey, there's going to be some overlap. So it's actually 2 factorial divided by, it's 4 factorial divided by 2 factorial, it's 12. There are 12 different ways to arrange these 4 letters, and each month of the year, the name of God, so to speak, that manifests itself, that expresses itself, so to speak, in our world is different because each month has a different orientation of these 4 letters. This is true with human names as well. So take a random name, the name Yaakov, okay, it's 4 letters. But because the 4 letters are different, it's 4 factorial, there are 24 different ways to spell it. So the way it's spelled in the Torah, the Yud, the Ayin, the Kuf, and the Beis, but it could be the Ayin and the Yud and Kuf, Beis, and so on. 24 different ways the name can manifest itself. And each manifestation of that same name, it's the name Yaakov, but it's a totally different expression of said name. And it goes even further. The letters have composite letters within them. So there may be way more than 24 permutations of this name. Moreover, there are other systems. So like the Ad Bash, for example, you could swap letters for other letters and create yet more permutations. We have 12 names, sons of Jacob. And we see these names appear twice. Parshas Vayigash, the nation is going down to Egypt. Let's list the 12 sons of Jacob and their children, 70 souls. And we see the exact same names here when it's already the other side of the pendulum, so to speak. The nation's about to head into a period, a mode of redemption. It's the same 12 names, but they're different. These names have expressions, have permutations, have ways of manifesting itself that match, that fits the descent to Egypt, that have exile variations, exile orientations. And those are the names that it mentions in Parshas Vayigash. And of course, to us, you read it on a superficial level, it looks the same. But the true expression is an exile version in Parshas Vayigash. And now it's enumerating these apparently same names again. And to us, it looks the same thing. You ask a child, they know the 12 sons of Jacob, they could spit it out. But the truth is, the permutation that they are expressing themselves in this week's Parsha, as the Midrash says, it's a version of these names that connotes redemption, reclamation, Exodus, ascent from Egypt. This is a very different, very advanced way of looking at names. When, traditionally, do we give names? You see, it's common in the world at large. They just found out they're pregnant. We're having a boy in July, and his name is whatever his name is. Tradition is we give a name by the bris, not before. So the child's born, and they're unnamed. And 8 days later, they have a circumcision. They join the covenant of Abraham. They become part of this great nation. And then we assign them a name. Why do we wait? There's something very special. There's an aura of holiness that happens at this ceremony. Elijah comes. A child is joining a very special fraternity. This is a covenant of Abraham. This is what makes the child part of this great nation. When we assign the name in that context, that's us saying the best, the holiest, most righteous version, permutation of this name, that should be their name. Because that name could be flipped on its head. You can have someone with a very righteous name, but they could take the name and corrupt it and express it in a very different fashion. Just as Ruvain has an Etzel version of it, and Ruvain has a description of God seeing our suffering and wanting to redeem us. A child is named at the bris, at this peak, at this pinnacle of holiness. That's the kind of version of this name we want to assign to the child. And what do we say? Kishem shenichnas bris. Just as they entered the covenant, this lofty level of an expression of their essence should continue for the rest of their life. This was a very new idea to me. Names do indeed connote essence. They connote the root of the soul, the mission of the soul. But each name has a myriad of permutations, and even a single name given to a single person, that name can shift from one permutation to another. So we have Ruvain in chapter 46 of Genesis. That name, it's in a descent to exile permutation. Now that doesn't mean that necessarily the person is regressing spiritually, because you could fulfill an angle, a dimension of your mission in exile. It could be constructive, of course. We're supposed to grow no matter the circumstances. Ruvain, he had an element of his mission that needed to be fulfilled. There was an exile version, so to speak, of his mission that needed to be done, that needed to be actualized in Egypt. And now the same name, it's being presented, it's being shifted to a different expression, to a different dimension, to a different permutation, one of redemption and exodus. Now I want to kind of make this idea very practical. This will be, we'll call it our dilemma. The most existential of all dilemmas. This year, it's year 9 of the Parsha Podcast. Torah is our idea. We have an idea, powerful idea, new idea. Now it's time for the dilemma. We have a name, of course. And if we're fortunate, we have a special name, a Jewish name, share a name with great people. But just because you share a name with other people, it doesn't mean that the exact version of that name that they had, you have. So how indeed do we identify our mission? How do we identify our essence? How do we identify the reason for which God placed us here, for which He created us? How do we isolate the root of our soul? It's important to have a name. It's very important to understand your mission. But knowing your name, it's not enough. Even with one name, there are manifold dimensions and permutations of that name. That name can have an exile version, a descent into the swamp version. And then the mission in that context is to maintain your values, to elevate the sparks, to develop servitude that can be channeled towards faith, towards goodness. And that very same name can represent redemption, glory, grandeur, distinction, pride, princeliness. Is there any path that we can take to find our name, to isolate exactly what our mission is? For those of y'all who have been listening to the Parsha Podcast for some time, you know how obsessed I am with this question. We could ask it in a lot of different ways, but it's the question we need to know. It's the most important question of them all. So I'm going to give you an answer. Jethro had 7 names. Now, this is not just 7 permutations of one name. This is 7 different names. So just to think about what his essence is, that's a whole new dimension of a problem. Not just one name and how exactly do you figure out what that means, but 7 different names. And this is very important because I quoted you the Rashi in chapter 4 of Exodus. Rashi says, Jethro, Yisro, Reuel, Chovev, Kani, Putiel. Yes, or don't get these people confused. It's all the same person. Just 7 names for one person. In 3 places in Scripture, Exodus 4 that we mentioned, Exodus 18, Parshas Yisro, and the book of Numbers, chapter 10. In 3 places, Rashi finds the need to tell us, Jethro, he has 7 names. Reuel, Yeser, Yisro, Kani, Chovav, Chever, and Putiel. So how we unpack Jethro's 7 names and what the meaning behind the septi names, what's the secret there? Maybe we don't know, but I will tell you that I recorded a podcast a couple of years ago. 3 years ago, Parshas Yisro, one of my most delightfully titled podcasts called Death Row and Jethro, I offered maybe an idea for how to think about Jethro's 7 names. There are several other things that have 7 names. The Yetzer Hara has 7 names. Gehenom has 7 names. So I wanted to suggest that there are 7 facets to the Yetzer Hara. And capitulating the Yetzer Hara on each one of these 7 facets will result in 7 facets of Gehenom. And Jethro, he triumphed over all these 7 facets, and he was awarded a new name for every triumph. That's Jethro. Let's talk about Moshe. How many names did Moshe have? In the Torah, there's only one name for Moshe. Abraham is Abraham, Isaac is just Isaac, but Jacob is Israel, and Sarai is Sarah, and Hoshea becomes Yehoshua. Lots of maneuvering of names in the Torah. Moshe is called only Moshe. However, the Midrash tells us that Moshe had 10 names. There are 10 names that Moshe had. So this is way more than 7. Most of us are struggling to figure out what one name we have, or what permutation of one name we have. Moshe had 10 names, and they are Yered, Chever, Yikusiel, Avigdor, or Avigdor. It's one name or one word or 2 words. Avisokra, Avizanuach, Tuvia, Shmai ben Sofer, Levi, or Halevi. And number 10 is Moshe. So he had even more names than Jethro. But there's a big, big, big difference between Jethro's 7 names and Moshe's 10 names. Jethro is called in our Parsha Reuel, Yeser, Yisro. Later on he's called Chovev, Putiel. He has the names featured in Scripture. Moshe is called Avigador, Tuvia, Yekutiel, and so on, exactly 0 times in Scripture. Jethro is identified by these 7 names. Moshe has 10 names, but he's called by only one of them. How come Moshe's other names are not featured in the Torah? Moreover, and just as an aside, what that means is that if those names are essences, we're not told about the essence of Moshe as Avigador, as all these other names, Yekutiel and so on, Yeser, Chever. We're not told about Moshe's identity and his essence and his mission on those dimensions. We're only told about him as Moshe. But who gave him the name Moshe? That was a name assigned to him by who? By his parents? By God? No. It's given to him by the daughter of Pharaoh, a princess of Egypt. Chapter 2 of our book, verse 10. Moshe, or the baby, the Yeled, he's called a lad, the baby, is given back by his biological mother to his adoptive mother. Vatikra Shmo Moshe, and she named him Moshe. Why did she name him Moshe? Vatomer, she said, Ki min hamayim mishisihu, because I drew him out of the water. And the word mishisihu, which means I drew him out, it's the same sound as Moshe. So mishisihu, Moshe. And of course, all the commentators say, wait, that's in Hebrew. How does she know Hebrew? Lots of discussion about that in the commentators. But I imagine that Moshe's mother, she had him for 3 months before she had to put him in the water. She gave him a name. And then she had him, she was nursing him for, I don't know, a year? She gave him a name. We don't even know what that is. We're only told the name is given by the Egyptian. Are you ready for the deep insight? I want to suggest that the name of Moshe can serve as an answer to our mega dilemma. And I'm going to use some commentaries here to help me. Moshe is pulled out of the water. And therefore, reasons the princess of Egypt, she's known as Batya, or Bisya, some people call her, daughter of Pharaoh. I pulled him out of the water. Mishisihu, I pulled him out. I withdrew him from the water. And therefore, I'll call him Moshe. What does this have to do with that? What does the fact that he was withdrawn from the water have to do with me calling him Moshe? Is this just a callback to that very memorable time that I adopted this baby? So the Sephora says something very powerful. It's not just a callback. She understood the secret of names. She understood that a name is a mission, is an essence. And she says, I'm going to call you Moshe. What does the word Moshe mean? Says this for Mimalet Moshe et acher mitzara. The word Moshe means he saves and he withdraws and he removes from danger others from tzara, from danger. I pulled him out of danger. His essence is he will pull others out of danger. She called him Moshe because I withdrew him from calamity. Pharaoh had decreed every male must be killed. And I found this baby and I spared them. This kid was on the doorstep of death. He was already in the water, floating. Can you imagine putting a little baby floating in the water? Good luck. Send me a postcard. That was what his mother had to do because there was no better solution. And the princess came, found the baby, had mercy, or had feelings, positive feelings towards his baby, and saved him. I pulled him out of the water. I'm going to name him Moshe because his mission now, from now on, is to pull others out of the water. The word Moshe means to save others from the same sort of danger that he was in. That was the argument for the rationale for the naming of Moshe. This perspective of the name of Moshe is endorsed by the Torah. The Torah calls him Moshe. The Torah is affirming this theory, this argument of the princess of Egypt. And indeed, Moshe's story, he's a savior. He's saving others from despair, from the quagmire, from the morass, from the raging river. The Torah is saying to the princess of Egypt, I don't care what the mother named him. I don't care about all these names that he has. His name in the Torah is going to be Moshe because this is his essence. The Torah endorses the Egyptian princess's rationale. Indeed, Moshe's role is to save others. And indeed, you read a story. He sees the Egyptian hitting the Hebrew. He saves him. He stops the other Jew from being hit. And he saves Jethro's daughters from being harassed. Moshe's essence, just as he matures, is all about being a savior for others. And of course, he's going to play that role for the whole nation. And he's going to do it again and again. That is his name. That is his essence. And where did this come from? Who figured this all out? this Egyptian. She reasoned, I save him from danger, from mortal danger. Because he was saved, he must save others. He must pass it on. Now this Egyptian, she's not a prophet or a prophetess. In fact, the Or HaChaim points out, Jacob and Isaac and all the sons of Jacob, they were all named with prophecy. This is a woman who is not a prophet. And nevertheless, she hit the nail on the head. She hit the target right in the bullseye. He even points out all the other names with a reason in the Torah. First there's the reason and then there's the name. Here she calls him Moshe, and then it gives the name first and then the reason. Because all of the names that were given for a reason, there was prophecy involved. Here there's no prophecy involved. So we have Moshe, the most important man, the greatest man who ever lived, and his name is Moshe. His mission, his essence is Moshe. And it was figured out without prophecy. Accordingly, we can discover, or it's possible to discover one's name, one's identity, one's essence, one's mission without prophecy. The Egyptian princess figured it out. And her rationale is, he was spared from death. His mission must be to do the same for others, to pass it forward, to convey it forward. I think this is a very powerful idea, a new idea. How do you discover your name? One of the best ways to discover your name, to discover your mission, what's your calling? Find out what difficulties, what challenges, what traumas you overcame. If you overcame trauma, you are required, you are mandated, you are morally obligated, says the Princess of Egypt, says the Torah. You're required to do that to others. Moshe was saved from death. You must save others from the same fate. Very much later in the Torah, we read about Aaron being elevated to be the high priest. Now, chapter 32 of Exodus, Aaron is complicit on some level in making the golden calf. So when Moshe says, you're the high priest, do the service in the temple and the tabernacle, he says, I'm not worthy. He didn't feel worthy to serve as priest. And Moshe told him, no, you feel like you're not worthy because you did the golden calf. Actually, no, it's the opposite. Because you did the golden calf, that's why you're the worthiest. Because in the temple, you're going to show others how to improve, how to overcome, how to cleanse. There's no one better than you. Because of your experience and your trauma with the golden calf, that's why you're the best candidate. When you overcome something, you can now help others do the same. Moshe, you were pulled out of the water, you pull others out of the water. Aaron, you overcame the difficulty. You repented. You transformed yourself. You refined yourself. You cleansed yourself. You expiated yourself from the influence of the golden calf. Every sinner in the nation is now able to learn from your example. This is now your mission. You must be the high priest because of this previous trauma. To me, this is a very powerful insight. How do you discover your name? How did Moshe get his name? It came from a non-prophet source, from the daughter of Pharaoh. And she reveals, one way at least, to discover your mission is to discover what you overcame. If you overcame any trauma, any suffering, any depression, if you've beaten your demons or your addictions or your habits, if you were fortunate enough, for example, to discover God, to discover Torah later in life, if you have transformed yourself for the better, you have a superpower and you have a mission and you have a mandate and you have a name. This is why Aaron was chosen. This is how Moshe was given his name and his mission. This is how we too can find our name and our calling. This is maybe the answer, or one of the answers to our mega dilemma. Names carry a lot of meaning, and they appear all over our Parsha. May we all be so fortunate as to discover our name and to fulfill our mission. I appreciate your time, your attention. We're on to the book of Exodus. We hope and pray that we'll succeed in studying every section in every Parsha in this wonderful book, together in good health and in great spirits. Have a wonderful day. A fantastic rest of your week. A sensational, terrific, splendid, magnificent Shabbos upcoming. And please God, with the help of the Almighty, we'll talk again next week. My email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.